Does everyone have the capacity to recover from past traumas?
Yes, I think, yeah. I think, so this is when we were talking about the mental health stuff earlier, this is something that I wanted to touch on because I think that I think that this really is one of the precursors to our mental well-being. Everybody experiences trauma, everybody. And I think that for a long time we've had sort of a misunderstanding about what trauma is. So most of us, when we think trauma, it's like, oh, you were sexually assaulted, or you were in a massive car accident, or you almost died. But trauma really is any experience that happens in your life that causes you to sort of fragment away from your true identity, right? So like, let's say that I'm in second grade and somebody makes fun of me in second grade, and for some reason in my child brain that becomes really difficult for me to handle, and so I adapt who I am. I start to change who I am and change my identity to fit into the norms of society and to protect myself, right? So every time that something like that happens, we create these protective mechanisms and these barriers and walls that then keep us from really truly being who we are and expressing who we are in the fullest form. And so some traumas are more extreme, let's say, than others, but every single person in this entire world has experienced some form of trauma. And then we look at, you know, it's the trauma that I've had in my life, and then there's generational trauma that gets passed down, right? So what happened to my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents, and that lives in my DNA. And so I believe that we all can heal it, but I don't think many of us can do it on our own, because I don't think that many of us are even aware that it exists, right? Because oftentimes when you experience a trauma, you shut down that memory, you lock it off, right? And then you just fragment and you become these, like, you know, you've got little pieces of yourself kind of externally not really integrated into the wholeness of who you are, which is why I think the body is like the tool. It's one of these places where we can go because all of that stuff is stored in the body. So talk therapy to me is, it's beneficial and it's powerful, but I think often we can't talk about what we don't know, right? And there's so much stored lived experience that exists in the body that if you couple talk therapy with breath and with movement and really getting people to go into their bodies, this is where we can start to unlock what that is, right? I mean, there's experiences of people who were sexually molested when they were a child, had no memory of it because they completely locked it off, and then get into their body and start doing these body-based therapies or these movement therapies, and then have this like burst of awakening because something in the body is unlocked, and then they have this realization that, whoa, this happened to me, right? And then that leads to this uncovering of all these other things, which I think sometimes when we think about, I think depression is a really good example, right? There's clinical depression that, like, I have a chemical imbalance in my brain that needs to be regulated or normalized. But a lot of us just have situational depression, right? We're in a relationship, or we're in an experience, or we're in a life situation that we struggle with, and therefore we experience depression, right? We go into this like feeling of hopelessness and this disconnection. But those things, I think when we go into the body and we start looking at like what is our history, we can unwind and really, I think it all comes back to just coming back to wholeness and really figuring out, who am I unapologetically, right? Without the conditioning that society or my family or my school or my church or the world has given me, and how can I fully express being that person? And that's what I think trauma keeps us from doing, right? Because trauma, any traumatic event says it's not safe to be like this because this will happen, and therefore I can't be this portion of myself. So yes, but I don't think many of us can do it alone. So I think you need guidance, whether that's plant medicine or teachers or healers or whatever, you know, whatever avenue works the best for you, which I think is another piece that's really important, that if people go to a therapist, whatever kind of therapist it is, it's really important for people to advocate for themselves. Like if I meet you and you're not, I'm just not resonating with you, I could think, okay, well, I'm just going to stay with you and maybe eventually it'll work out. But when you find the person that really is the match for you, it's the space where you can really unveil everything and start to heal. And I think so many of us don't know that. We don't know, because of the trauma, that we can advocate for ourselves and push for what it is that we need to find the truth and the wholeness of who we are.
Well, let me hear you say mountain, mountain.